In our CSWN cover story on Extreme Makeover Clinical Trial Edition, we took a look at two trials that have created some very great interest in terms of new ways of doing clinical trials, and one of those was SAFE PCI, and so I wanted to introduce you to the lead author of that particular piece, Dr. Sunil V of Duke Clinical Research Institute, DCRI, and this has gotten a great deal of publicity, if nothing else, than the way you conducted this trial. Can you talk about that first, then we'll talk about the data itself.
Sure. So I think what's very clear for everyone that's involved in clinical research is that the cost of doing business the way we were traditionally doing it, which is building the trial up from the ground up every single time, is just not sustainable anymore. The costs are just too high. So this is really an idea that was hatched by Rob Califf and Bob Harrington and Eric Peterson, which is to say, why don't we leverage the ongoing data collection of registries that we have to reduce redundant workload at the sites? And let me give you a very, very basic example. If you're a site that is participating in the ACC registries, which you should to improve quality, and you're going to be entering all the patient and procedure data into the registry, but you also do clinical trials, you may actually, someone else at the site, may actually turn around to a different computer and enter the exact same information into a different database. And now with all the technology that we have, we should have a way for these two different databases to talk to each other. So Bob Harrington, using NIH funding and with the integral collaboration of the ACC, I mean, it's just been a tremendous partnership, and ACC has played an integral role in this, has developed an interface between the Cath PCI registry, which is the largest ongoing PCI registry in the world, and a clinical trial case report form. The clinical trial case report form actually conforms to traditional clinical trial databases. It conforms with FDA guidelines on electronic databases, so it can be used for investigational new drugs or investigational devices. At the site level, what happens is a patient is consented, enrolled, and randomized just like any other clinical trial. They have to get IRB approval, they undergo their PCI procedure, and then as part of their routine workflow, sites will enter patient and procedure data into the registry. These data are then automatically exported and auto-populate the clinical trial case report form. Additional trial relevant data are then collected by the sites, and when they go to put that into the clinical trial case report form, 50 to 60% of it is already complete. They don't have to put that information in again. So it really reduces redundant workload and accelerates enrollment and reduces trial costs.
So what were you looking at specifically in this trial?
So the scientific question we wanted to answer was, is there a role for radial artery access in women undergoing PCI? The rationale being, we know that women are at increased risk for bleeding, but we also know that radial artery access reduces that risk. Data from the ACC registries shows us that women are much less likely to undergo transradial procedures, probably because they have smaller radial arteries. Those arteries are more prone to spasm, and spasm is implicated as a major cause of transradial procedure failure. So we thought that there might be a safety advantage, but there might also be a higher rate of access site crossover to the traditional femoral approach, and that's the question we wanted to answer.
And where is the data published?
So the manuscript is in preparation. We hope to be submitting in the next week or so. Thank you. You've reminded me that I've got to work on that when I get back to my hotel room. But we presented that data here at the TCT meeting as a late-breaking clinical trial yesterday. We found that there was a 60 to 70% reduction in bleeding or vascular complications among women undergoing either cardiac catheterization or PCI. But we did also find that about 6% of women, we just couldn't complete the procedure from the radial artery, and we had to go to the traditional femoral artery approach. The major reason was radial artery spasm. So that is an issue, and I think that if I could sort of project into the future where we think this field is going, I really hope that industry pays attention to this and develops better devices, smaller devices, so that we can actually broaden the application of transradial procedures to people like women, elderly, patients who may have small radial arteries.
Well, it's Dr. Rao and the DCRI team that have done this tremendous work in helping us all create a better way of doing clinical trials. So please see our cover story, please see the rest of our TCT coverage, and for CardioSource World News, I'm Rick McGuire.